All right, Marcus, what about the Daniel fast? I made a point the other day that I want to add some light to because I left out an important aspect. So let's talk about the Daniel fast. It's a popular thing to say, hey, I'll do a Daniel fast. And we're talking about this because we're talking specifically about a biblical fast. Fasting means abstaining from food, according to the scriptures and according to the biblical definition. And looking at a Daniel fast, let's look at Daniel 1 and Daniel 10. I'm going to read parts of each of these passages. Daniel 1:8, Daniel 1:8 from the ESV. But Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food or with the wine that he drank. Therefore, he asked the chief of the eunuchs to allow him not to defile himself. And God gave Daniel favor and compassion in the sight of the chief of the eunuchs. It goes on to say, we can move on down to verse 12. It says, test your servants for 10 days. Let us be given vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance and the appearance of the youths who eat the king's food be observed by you, and deal with your servants according to what you see. In the scriptures here, it says he resolved that he would not defile himself. Why? Because ceremonially, it would be a breaking of the law to eat the food that they were asking him to eat. This is not about fasting. It is about his identity and who he is in the covenant in which he walked. So let's lay that foundation right here, because we connect this oftentimes to Daniel 10, verse 2. And I'll read from 2 to about 4. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning for 3 weeks. I ate no delicacies, no meat or wine entered my mouth, nor did I anoint myself at all for the full 3 weeks. On the 24th day of the first month, as I was standing on the bank of the great river, I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a man clothed in linen with a belt of fine gold from Uphaz around his waist. So here we see Daniel was in mourning for 21 days. And that mourning, it seems to indicate that mourning produced a response in his dietary decisions, and that he ate no delicacies, no meat or wine entering his mouth. So it seems to indicate that the mourning precedes the decision to change his diet. Nonetheless, it's very clear that the word mourning is used here. That is Hebrew word number 56 in the Strong's, which means to bewail, lament, or mourn. And it is different from the word fasting, and it doesn't mean fasting. Fasting, again, means to abstain from food. That's important. And we make these jumps in scripture, but we are actually a little bit less precise than we ought to be. What do I mean? It says in John 1:1, Jesus is the word that became flesh. I believe God is very specific about the words that he chose to use. I believe we cannot separate the specificity of the word from who he is, especially since he's referred to as the word. So if Daniel's fast or his mourning was a fast, I would not expect the Hebrew writer to use the word mourning to describe a fast. I'm not saying there are not benefits to a Daniel fast. In fact, if you're going on a fast of some sort and you're going to fast a meal or two a day, and you want to eat one meal a day, this is a great way to do it. But fasting from a biblical perspective means abstaining from food. Here's another common scripture where we talk about Moses fasting. And I want to use this to anchor back to the idea that the scripture is very precise when it talks about fasting. Exodus 34:28, referring to Moses, he's talking, Moses is with the Lord on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. And it says he did not eat bread or drink water. And he wrote on the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 commandments. So Moses is in the manifest presence of God. It wasn't saying here that he fasted. It said he did not eat bread or drink water. And keep in mind, I do not believe abstaining from water is part of fasting. I believe that's thirsting. I don't practice abstaining from water. I don't recommend it unless someone has a very clear word from the Lord, and they need to be careful the duration of that type of fast because it is very intense on the physical body. So we're talking, and even Paul refers to the lack of water as thirstings in the context of the new covenant and the epistles. All right, so we see Moses here was in God's presence and he did not eat bread or drink water. So it's saying he didn't eat or drink. He was in the manifested habod presence of God. It's not called a fast. So back to the idea that the scripture knows how to be specific with what a fast is. Psalm 35:13, we read, "But as for me, when they were sick, my clothing was sackcloth. I humbled my soul with fasting, and my prayer returns to my own heart." So this Hebrews 6:6-8-5 is the term fasting, which is abstinence from food. And it's a self-humbling of the soul, an intentional humbling of the soul, what Paul would refer to as subjugating the flesh. So as we wrap this up, I want to just be very clear that the Bible is very specific about the words that it uses. A Daniel quote unquote fast, which is biblically not a fast, may be very helpful. It might be you're in a place of mourning and you want to respond to that mourning with abstaining from certain foods like Daniel did. It might be that, hey, you want to eat a vegetarian diet for some time to do a cleanse. I don't hear that I'm saying it's not beneficial. I'm just saying it's not a fast. So we should expect that it has a different result or outcome than if we were to actually practice the biblical pattern of fasting. So this is my take on what we call a Daniel fast in our Christian culture, which is, in my estimation, based on what I just shared with you, technically not a fast, but still might be beneficial to the one who's practicing it.